you have to believe, then you don't know. And if you know, then you don't have to believe. Niri Shabaka, Ursa Ma'at Ra. And knowledge is infinite. Therefore, evolution is inevitable. Peace.
Welcome to Paradigm Shift TV 314. This is your brother, Pianki Patamatulu, Neferamun Ra. And today we back with another great show. We got a powerful brother who I've been wanting to get on for a while, but before we get into that, let me do my usual welcome. Let me say hotep to my fellow Kemetic brothers and sisters. Let me say God bless to my Christian brothers and sisters. Let me say assalamu alaikum to my brothers and sisters in the NOI. Let me say Islam to my Moorish brothers and sisters. And let me say Jambo to the rest of my brothers and sisters throughout the African diaspora, be it here in the wilderness of the United States or beyond. I say that welcome for one reason and one reason only. It's because if you are Black, I'm with you, and I hope that you are with me. Our different ideologies shouldn't keep us from uniting. We can disagree without being disrespectfully disagreeable. And with that, my brother, please introduce yourself to the Paradigm Shift TV 314 audience.
Hey, everybody, what's going on? I first want to give thanks to Pianki for even inviting me and allowing me to come on. My name is Negetee Hawkins, and for everyone who may feel like that name is too hard to say, just call me GT for short. It's real easy. I am 40 years old. I'm actually about to retire from my military career and head out into the civilian sector. I do identify as Christian, and that's pretty much it. I have 4 kids. I stay in Alabama. If there's anything else that I miss, I'll probably pick back up on it a little later. But that's the gist of me.
Okay. So first and foremost, I think me and anybody else with any common sense want to say thank you for your service. We couldn't do what we do and say what we want to say without brothers like you, putting y'all life on the line so we can enjoy the freedoms that we enjoy. So I want to say that first and foremost.
I appreciate it.
No doubt. Basically, so today we know you have, I know, and I want to let the audience know this brother got a lot of information regarding biblical history, referring to one of my favorite subjects, obviously, biblical history and how it intersects with Kemetic history that he and I will be getting into at a later date. But today we're just going to kind of get into his story with why he's a Christian, how that sort of came to be, and the backstory surrounding that. So, brother, I want to ask you: were you raised a Christian?
That's a pretty interesting question. Typically, you will find a lot of Christians who grew up in church and things of that nature, but that was not the case for me. Not that my family was not believers or unchristian, but going to church wasn't one of the things that they found a lot of importance in. But we will all sit around and have biblical stories or talk about biblical stories and things of that nature. So no, the answer to that question, I was raised Christian, but it wasn't like your typical or traditional type Christian home.
Gotcha. I think that's kind of similar to myself. And it's interesting. Me and the brother Nobody from Trust and Believe the Gospel. We looking to have a dialogue on the difference between a believer and a Christian, and whether or not it's a dichotomy between the two. And the reason I want to ask that question is because, kind of like what you just said, I was raised in a household where they believed in the existence of God, Jesus, etc. My grandmother had a picture of the crucifix right in the middle of the house. My mother had supper. Every Easter we went to church. We watched the King of Kings. We watched the Ten Commandments all day long. But you wouldn't call it a typical Christian household. We had choir parties, and every weekend we,
Right.
my family drank, that type of thing.
Yeah.
But they were believers, and I've been knowing my wife my whole life since second grade, but we didn't start dating till my junior year. Her family was the polar opposite. They were a Christian family from her great grandfather and each successive generation, heavily involved in the church. And so it was kind of like a culture shock a little bit for me coming to that family. So I got a little bit of a different understanding of what it was to be in a Christian culture as opposed to just being somebody who acknowledged the existence and the belief in God, but not really being in accordance with how one would behave if they were a Christian, if that makes sense. So,
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Just to piggyback off of what you said, while you was talking about the household with the crucifix and things of that nature, I recall my grandmother. She will always have these trinkets, I would call them, little Jesus trinkets, little angels posted everywhere in the house, and I can remember one time. Now she had this china cabinet. I think everybody grandma had one of those, but she had this china cabinet, and it had a little small statue of Jesus Christ ascending out of the clouds, and I remember somebody clipping the fingers off of that, and I remember her going ham. But even at that young age, I was thinking to myself, I was like, it's an idol. It's not a living thing.
right.
So, even at that age, I had a very interesting perspective on things. So, yeah.
No doubt. So, how old were you when you actually came to a point where you sort of learned the dichotomy between acknowledging the existence of God and actually deciding you wanted to be a Christian and sort of live for God and exhibit the behavior indicative of that lifestyle?
Okay. So that was spanned from the time when I was 6. And now it was always like I said, a belief. It was always a belief of Jesus. The times that we would go to church, they would teach, what Jesus Christ did for us on the cross and things of that nature. So I always had a belief, but what piqued my interest, I was 6 years old, and I don't know if you recall the movie called The Omen. Do you recall that movie?
Yeah.
Okay, so my grandmother and my mother, we were sitting in the room watching this movie, and a commercial came on. And they were talking amongst themselves, and I kept hearing this word, Antichrist, Antichrist. So I asked the question, and my mother and my grandmother proceeded to tell me about this Antichrist figure. And my mom explained to me that during the last days, right before Jesus Christ returns, that there will be a man who will oppose Jesus Christ, hence the term Antichrist. And she went into what I would call what would I call it? She went into like an animated description of how this person would look. He's supposed to be handsome. He's supposed to be charismatic. He's going to lead the entire world astray and things of that nature. And, my grandmother was affirming the things that she was saying. So I asked my mom, I said, so where is this in the Bible? And my mom said, well, you're going to have to read the book of Revelation. And when she said that, I said, okay, show me where the book of Revelation is at. And my grandmother tuned in, and she was like, she said, it's the last book of the Bible. And I remember my grandmother, she would have her bottle of Seagram's gin on the little coffee table right beside her bed with her ashtray, and there was a Bible right there beside her. So I picked the Bible up, and I opened the book to Revelation. And before I started to read, my mom and my grandmother told me, "Hey, before you read, you need to pray to God for understanding." And I'm like, okay. So I'm a child at this point in time, and I'm thinking, hey, soon as I pray to God for understanding, He's just gonna drop it right in my head, and I'm gonna understand it. And then my mother, started going through some of the things that were in, not necessarily Revelation, but in the Bible in regards to the last days. And she made a comment. She said, yeah, besides the Antichrist, the moon is supposed to drop away in blood. And I was like, what? Huh? Oh, I gotta read this. I gotta read this. So, we finished watching the movie, and then I went into a closet, like literally with not a flashlight, but I turned the light on, and I sat there and I read Revelations from Revelation chapter 1 to chapter 6. And when I got to chapter 6, I got to the place where it speaks about the moon turning red as blood. It didn't say it will drop away in blood, but verbatim it says that the moon turned to the color of blood, and the sun turned sackcloth of hair. And it talked about the stars of heaven falling to the earth as if it was shaken by a mighty wind. So when I got to that part, I closed the Bible, because I was like, no, it's not going to drop away in blood, but it's going to turn the color of blood. And now again, I'm 6 years old, and I'm seeing this, and I'm like, okay. So although what she said wasn't 100% correct, I actually know what it says for myself now. Right. And that right there put the fear of God in me. So as I got older, don't get me wrong, you know what I'm saying? Like, it wasn't like I just was straight up Christian and just living righteously and things of that nature. No, I was still a hard head little kid. Like I was out there. But when I turned 15, I was dating a young lady, and a requirement to date her, her mother told me that I had to go to church with them. And in doing so, that's when I actually stood up in church and said, I've been doing a lot of reading over the years and reading the Bible, and I have a fairly good understanding of the scriptures. Why not just go ahead and give my life to Christ? And that's what I did at the age of 15. So that's how it came about for me.
Wow, that's what's up. So 15 years old, you give your life to Christ. And so you say you're 40 now. So you're looking at almost you basically your mid-teens to all of your adulthood then.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Okay. And so what, as a teenager, dealing with, growing up, the challenges, the teenage angst, if you will, the pressure of how difficult was it to maintain the Christian lifestyle as somebody in your mid-teens?
It was very difficult. Because you still have all of you're not out of the world. You're just supposed to live as if you're not part of the world. But with all the negative influences, especially growing up, and I hate to put it out there like that, but growing up in our communities with the negative influences that we have, it made it really, really difficult. As a matter of fact, the very first day that I came home, like I felt like I was on cloud nine when I got home. And when I expressed that to my family and friends, hey, I got saved. My sister was like, oh goodness, you're gonna be boring now. So you can already see the negative impact of being a Christian just within your own home. Like, wow, I was thinking like, and even some of my friends express some of the same things. They still come to the house, but like they have blood rolled up or something.
You're
And
breaking up a little bit.
hell, I'm sorry.
You
Yeah,
good?
like some of my. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay, yeah. Some of my friends would come to the
Yeah, you went all the way out.
they would still come by and like they would beer and all this rolled up, and they would oh gee stuff.
All right, family, we had some technical difficulties, but we are back. Our brother gonna continue where we left off.
Okay, yeah. So, before my phone mysteriously died, I think I was expressing the fact that, right after I got home from church, that I told my family and my friends, about me getting saved, and my sister, she was like, "Oh, you're gonna be boring now," and even some of my friends expressed some of the same things because, like I was saying earlier, they would come to the house with beer and marijuana and all types of things, and oh no, don't get around G. He ain't trying to go to hell, and they will always pick at me. So that was just some of the things that I dealt with, and then of course I had my own strongholds. There were things that I was into, like I would smoke a lot. Like I was more of a smoker than like a drinker. And then also being very promiscuous and things of that nature. So yeah, it was pretty hard uh, trying to live the straight and narrow, and then also having to deal with the negative influence that were around me. But as you get older, you start to learn how to counter certain things.
No doubt. Yeah, and I know, my wife and um, I'm trying to think. I think I was 19 and she was 18. And, she gave her life to God a few months before I did. And, I followed suit. But the thing was, I didn't do it from an honest place. And that's where the problem came in. I did it, because I thought that's what she wanted me to do. I thought that's what I should do, not because that's what I wanted to do, because it was coming from a genuine place within myself, etc. So
Mm-hmm.
we got married very young. I was 20. She was 18. And then we both turned 21 and 9 and wait a minute, I'm a year. I was 20, she was 19, and then I turned 21 a couple of months later, and then a couple of months after that, she turned 20. So, but super young, to be getting married, bought a house and everything at 20, 20 years old and whatnot. But because my mind wasn't where it needed to be, spiritually or maturity wise, I made a lot of mistakes early on in the marriage. And so it's interesting to hear that you were able to, even though you were young and you acknowledge you still had some vices, that you still were able to kind of navigate that at that younger age. So as you got into your young adulthood, late teens, 18, 19, 20, etc. How did that affect your journey? And I know you've been in the military. I don't know how early you went in, but how did that start affecting your journey as you got more mature?
So pretty much, it was the same up and down situation from 15 all the way up to, I would say, I actually joined the military, and that was like in 2000. So I think I was like 20, 21 at the time. And it was when I was able to get away from, my friends and all those other influences that I was able to really, really dive into the scriptures and really dive into, living that lifestyle.
Okay. And you mentioned at the top you have 4 kids, you're married, and all of that. How excuse me, how old were you when you met your wife?
Okay, so as far as marriage is concerned, now, let's see, I got married at 24.
Okay.
So I got married at 24, and that situation didn't turn out as, I had wanted. I kind of felt like I got married like too early, and like mentally I wasn't ready. But me and her we stayed together for about 7 years, and I have 2 biological children from her, and the 2 biological kids are the only kids that I have biologically. My current wife now, she has 2 from a previous relationship that she had. So, but I include them as my 4 or as my 2. So
Absolutely.
So that's how I look at it.
Absolutely.
But and that plays another role in it, where it's like the scripture says that a man, there's a way that seemeth right to a man, but in the end it leads to death. So I had to apply that to my life a lot, because there were so many things that I thought I was doing something right, but in the end it was just me really making all of the decisions and bad decisions. But you learn and you grow. And so after those situations, I've learned, and it's made me a lot more mature, a lot more wiser about the decisions that I make.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. Like I said, I've been knowing my wife since second grade, and we have a lot of family in common. Her cousin is, well, basically she's not her cousin, but she's like her cousin. She's a next door neighbor for years. She married my actual cousin. And so, you have these interlocked family dynamics to go along with the fact that I've been knowing her our whole life. So, elementary school, middle school, high school, but we weren't always in a relationship. We didn't start dating until my junior year. But prior to me dating her, she was dating an older guy. He was a senior. We were freshmen. And, like often happened in the 90s, he ran his game, spoke his speech, so to speak, and she ended up getting pregnant. And that child is now 26 years old. But that's my daughter. You know what I'm saying? So
Right, exactly.
Since she was 6 months old, we've been dating. And even though she has a relationship, with her father, I wouldn't have it any other way. But I'm her father. You know what I'm saying? And then I have a daughter outside of our marriage, and my wife is probably closer to my daughter than I am. So when you have those type of dynamics, it is what it is. And so, I perfectly understand where you're coming from. Those your wife's children or your children, period.
Right, exactly.
So
and just to expound on that a little bit, and this is why I sit down and talk to my son about, what I'm saying, I try to help him understand like the dynamics of, a nuclear family. I even told him, the enemy doesn't like the idea of a nuclear family. It's a threat. It's a threat to society for some reason. But I tell him, just make sure that keep yourself, keep yourself from getting in any kind of trouble. You know what I'm saying? Like, you don't want to go out there and have a child from this place or that place, because you don't want all of the drama that comes along with it. This is why the scripture tells us that, God would rather us be with one person. Like the Proverbs say, love the wife of your youth, things of that nature, because, overall, he wants us to have a good and prosperous life, and he wants us to avoid the dramas that we see today. Baby mama drama or what have you, baby daddy drama or what have you. So I feel like it's my job to try and although I wasn't the perfect example, it's still my job to lead him in the way that he should go.
absolutely. One thing I say, even though I no longer subscribe to the Christian paradigm, I tell people all the time, you can't deny the wisdom in the book. And so one thing that I used to say this all the time as a Christian, even when you just look at the Genesis story and you talk about Adam, the blueprint for how a man should be. Hi, baby. You come over here. My granddaughter here.
Hello.
Hey, everybody.
Hey everybody.
All right.
Hello.
We'll talk later. But yeah, my daughter, who I was just speaking of, those are her children. So she's married with children now. So, but yeah, we when you look at Genesis, it gives you the blueprint, in my opinion, anyway. And that's why I say it's still wisdom in the book, whether you follow the paradigm or not. You look at Adam and you look at his creation. Adam is created. He is given a place to live, and he's given a job. His place to live is the garden. His job is to keep the garden. He has those two things before God gives him a woman. So he has a place to live and he has a job. Now, if you equate that to modern times, the man has a place to live and he has a job. He's not moving in with his woman. His woman not taking care of him.
Right.
He has a place to live and he has a job. Now, God puts him to sleep and takes his rib and fashions the woman. He has no input. He can't say, God, give me a woman with a Coca-Cola bottle that look like Halle Berry or Beyonce. God gives him what he needs, what he knows he needs. And so I used to say, look, like this is one of my favorite things to get into when I was a Christian. And I still, you know, like you see, I know it by heart. Because at the end of the day, see, we search for a particular type of female. But that particular type of female that we think we want is not always the female we need. And we get confused in this modern context of what a man is supposed to be. We supposed to have the house, the job, and the stability. And if we're doing it together, that's fine. I'm not even talking about who making what amount of money, but a man shouldn't be moving in with a woman and expecting a woman to take care of him. And if you look at the biblical example, again, he had a house and he had a job, and he got what the woman he knew he needed, as opposed to the woman he may have wanted. So, you know, that's just my take from it, and it's a lot of things you could extrapolate from the book and use it still, even not necessarily taking it in the literal context, but just taking it from a wisdom standpoint. I still have, and I'm not going to ever get it removed. Proverbs 18:22 tattooed on my arm with my wife's name under it. He that find a wife find a good thing.
Good thing.
Remind. For I used to tell her, you know, I got that because I wanted to remind myself that what I perceived then as my adversary, the reason I was displaying certain behaviors that were contradictory to me wanting to be with her was because the enemy tricked me, or was tricking me, had tricked me into believing that she wasn't that good thing, that it was something out there better, and that I wasn't going to allow that to happen again. And
right.
Again, you can always take wisdom from that book. Now, for those who believe and who are followers and adherents to the Christian paradigm, I don't mean any disrespect by saying I don't follow it. I'm just saying that anybody can still take lessons and extrapolate them from it, especially from a family and marriage context. So,
Yeah, you know, when you actually think about it, most of your ancient cultures was like that anyway. I remember looking at Nollywood back in the day, and before the man married the woman, he had to, one, have a price, like he had to have a dowry to pay for the daughter. He had to have a place to live. He had to show himself to be worthy of even taking this man's daughter. So, you know, even apart from the biblical perspective, I just, from what I can see from most ancient cultures, and still some cultures today, they still practice that. You know, you got to pay this dowry to marry my daughter. I thought about doing it myself.
Yeah, you got to show yourself worthy of my daughter's hand.
Right.
And you got to make sure your son is worthy of my daughter's hand.
Exactly.
But
Yep.
you got a responsibility both ways. Yeah.
Yep.
And we've gotten away from that because for various reasons, but the main one is that the father not in the home, particularly as it pertains to us as black men and women. Because the truth of the matter is our Caucasian counterparts, for the most part, while it may not be coming from that ancient context, they are preparing their children for that next step. You know, when I hear them talk, you know, being my boss or the general manager of the company I work for, they preparing, you know, their children for adulthood and for the future. My general manager was appalled when he found out his daughter fiance was already living with her. Now they engaged, but the fact that he was living with her, he was appalled, and he told them so. So, you know, it's a different culture, and it's a different type of context. You know, when you have certain principles to how you want to, you know, raise your family and you know, uphold them to standards you want to uphold them to. So, but yeah, keep hammering that home with your son, man. Not that you need me to tell you that, but that's an excellent idea and guidance, because even you don't have to have been perfect, but the fact that you walked in that lane and you know what the consequences are, who better to tell them than somebody who went through it and, you know, persevered through it, you know. So
Right.
So as it comes to, you know, some of the stuff that you study, because I hear this a lot, that sometimes, you know, some Christians just believe and their belief is never shaken because it's just ingrained in them, and that's all they ever require. For you, was that sort of the path that you took, where, hey, this is what I believe, I'm not worried about finding something to solidify my belief? Or did you come to a point where you was like, you know what, I believe it, but I really want to study, as the good book says, to show myself approved and prove that what I believe is actually true? Is that the route you kind of took, or was believing sort of enough for you?
Well, believing for me was enough, because for me, you know, how the scripture says, it says that it's impossible to please God without faith. But there's a reason why, as you just stated, the scripture tells us to study, like you're commanded to study. So going back to, you know, when I was 6 years old, as I stated, my mom gave me something. She said, "Oh, the moon is going to drop away in blood." So I could have, and I don't know what prompted me to want to go and search myself to see if that's really what the scripture said, but I went and pretty much did that quick study to see if that's what it actually said, and then I walked away with what it really said. So yeah, for me, I believed it, and I felt like if this is what the scripture says, then I should be able to go out and find the evidence of what the scriptures is saying. If the flood happened, then I should be able to go out to where the Bible says that, you know, the ark landed. I should be able to see some type of residual evidence demonstrating that this is what happened. This is what's left. This is why things are the way that they are after that. Even going back to that movie we were just talking about, the Ten Commandments. Let me tell you how this is when we're gonna get into this. I promise you the next time I call. But this is what started me on my journey in studying Egyptian history, because like Hollywood has a funny way of displaying things on the television screen, and it's like, oh, the water's parted open, and look at all the special effects and things of that nature. So, I was captivated. I was like, oh my goodness, wow, Moses and Ramses going at it. What's her name? Nefertiti got a crush on Moses. All that stuff. And so, knowing me, I said, let me go and read. And I go and read in daggone Genesis. I go read in Exodus, Deuteronomy, Numbers, Leviticus. I ain't see nothing about no daggone Nefertiti or a fight between Ramses and Moses, and I'm even like, hold up, man. Like, a lot of the stuff that was what the scripture is saying, they didn't put in the movie, and I'm like, what is going on here? So what started me looking into Egyptian history, back in the day, we didn't have no daggone, we ain't had no internet. You jump on www, Google, and all this other stuff, or you ain't have your cell phone to jump up and look up stuff right there at your hip. No, you had to literally either go to a library, or if you was fortunate enough, your mom or somebody had some Encyclopedia Britannicas at the house.
That was me, World Book Encyclopedia.
Yeah, so I used to stay with my godparents from time to time, because I don't know if you could tell or not, but I've been all up and down the East Coast, but I'm originally from Washington, D.C.
Okay.
So my grandmother used to work at a live-in job for some white folk that owned a book company called Crown Books. I don't know if you ever heard of them. But she used to live at the location, so I would have to stay with my godbrother and his parents. And so, I was like part of the family down there. But his mom was a teacher, and she had all kinds of books, and they had a bookshelf. And she had science books, she had Encyclopedia Britannicas. At that time, I think it was like 88, 89, and they go all the way from A to Z. So I was like, okay, well, let me look up Ramses. So I go and look up Ramses in the book, and in my ignorance, though, I'm like, I see Ramses, I see him posted here in this encyclopedia, and I read about his history. Now, keep in mind that the information at that time is what they had, and a lot more information since that point in time. There's a lot more information about Ramses and some of the other pharaohs that have come to light since then. But at that point in time, it showed a mummy in black and white of Ramses, and you know how the Bible says that when the waters departed and came back to, that the armies of Egypt were drowned. And there's another area in the scriptures where it says that Pharaoh and his armies drowned. And I'm looking at this picture, and it says Ramses, and I'm like, wow, this is the Pharaoh who was part of the Exodus, and I can't believe this is like, wow, I was spellbound. But I say all that to say this: that is what started me in my research when it comes to Kemet or ancient Egypt. And unfortunately, though, like within the description of Ramses, even earlier in this book, in the encyclopedia, it says something to the effect that most Egyptologists disagree that Pharaoh Ramses was the Pharaoh of the Exodus, and this and that, this and that. So I'm like, okay, this is the point in time where it's like, okay, your faith is going to be tested, because it's like they saying that he's not the Pharaoh. The Bible didn't necessarily name the Pharaoh, but Hollywood says he is the Pharaoh. So it's like, man, what am I going to do with this information? So all it did was made me hungry enough to go and do more research. And so after I did more research, and I'm talking about 4 or 5 years after that point, I would get into these discussions with people about the Exodus and about the Pharaoh, and I came across, now this is like when the internet started to become a lot more popular, started getting a little bit more information, and also I used to love to go to Martin Luther King library and just sit. I'm talking about all day in the library just reading. And I came across an article about Manetho, and there were some questions about his chronology. And the question, well, the issue was Manetho had apparently incorporated pharaohs at different points in times in history, when in fact they were either co-regent or they were reigning at somewhere around the same time within different parts of Egypt, or it was the same pharaoh who just had a different name. And so with that information, armed with that information, I'm like, okay, let me see if I can try and find something, like something to get this information right. Because to me, and I tell people this all the time, to me, I'm not going to question the scriptures. He didn't name the Pharaoh, but for some reason he left the name out. So it's not up. For me, the scriptures are not in question. For me, it's the information that's being given to us about the scriptures that's in question. And so, again, being armed with that whole scenario with Manetho, I started looking at other pharaohs that could possibly be the Pharaoh of the Exodus. So I started making one of the most common mistakes that I see a lot of my brethren make, and that's equating the names with Moses. So you got a Pharaoh by the name of Thutmoses. So I said, can Thutmoses be the one who was Pharaoh at the time? Because you got Moses, then you got Thutmoses. But then I would go and read, again, at that point in time, the information for Thutmoses was not, there wasn't a whole lot of information as it is today. But what I did learn about Thutmoses, and I believe it was Thutmoses the fourth, apparently he fell asleep at the Sphinx, and he had a dream, and the Sphinx came to life and told him that if he would unbury the Sphinx, that he will make him Pharaoh of Egypt. So I'm reading, I'm like, I still can't make this connection with the biblical Exodus. But so far, at this point in time, this is probably the closest person I can get to. But, again, it made me even more hungrier to go and do this research to try and figure this thing out. And I'm telling you, bro, it's been years of research trying to figure this thing out. So then I started, and you can stop me at any time if you have any questions.
No, go ahead, bro. Keep going.
Okay, all right. So now keep in mind, I'm doing everything I possibly can to avoid giving you my conclusion as to who it is.
Absolutely, because we're gonna say that for the next trip.
Right. But so another thing that I started doing, I was like, okay, I learned about a group called the Hyksos. And I'm like, okay, the Hyksos, they were Semitic people because they were called shepherd kings. Uh, they came into power. They were called foreigners. The Egyptians didn't really like them like that, so much so that I believe it was Pharaoh Tao, who had a gash across his face. So I was like, they must have hated him really bad. But when it came to the Joseph story, I was like, okay, the Hyksos, maybe it was under the Hyksos dynasty, and I believe this goes into like between your 13th, no, right after the 13th dynasty of Egypt, you got your 14th, 15th, and 16th dynasties. This is when you have the Hyksos in power at that time. I said maybe it was because the Hyksos were shepherd kings that they allowed Joseph to come into Egypt and bring his family from Canaan or from Israel into Egypt and live in Goshen. And maybe after the Hyksos lost power, that they weren't the only ones who was expelled, but the Hebrews were kicked out as well. That was one of my other thoughts. But again, for some reason, the timeline didn't fit, and I could not find any residual evidence of an exodus, as the Bible states, for the Hyksos. So I was at ground zero. I was like, I know this happened. I know this happened. I believe the scriptures, but something is not right with the Egyptology. Something is not right with it. So, and so that took me on into another journey, and then I found it. And then I found it. My first real revelation came when I went and reinvestigated the Menetho quotes, and that's pretty much where it started for me. So that's where I'm gonna leave it until the next time we talk about it. I'll go into even more details about, and I think I brought it up. You brought it up in the chat where it was saying there's a guy named Artapanus who names one of the pharaohs during the oppression. All of that plays a role in it. But like I said, I'll go into even more details the next time we talk.
No doubt, no doubt. That's peace. That's peace. Yeah, you gave a nice little preview of what's to come, and so family, me and the brother gonna we actually gonna have a nice little dialogue about where we kind of have a dichotomy about this particular subject, but that's down the line. The next time he come on, he basically gonna break all this information down, uninterrupted, unopposed. This won't be a debate or an argument or a dialogue. This will be his presentation on all of the information that he just mentioned and the conclusion that he came to. And then I have a presentation similar to that'll be coming out pretty soon. It's done. I've been holding it because I didn't know which channel I wanted to put it up on, but I think I'm gonna go ahead and drop it on both channels, talking about the early dynastic period and what my assertion is. So we're just gonna be trading some information. Nothing negative whatsoever. We're gonna let our brother come on and speak his speech and do his thing. So excellent preview of what's to come. So my grandkids is making an abundance of noise, so I'm gonna go ahead and let our brother close out. Anything in particular you want to close out with as far as letting people know where they can find you social media wise, anything you got going on with regards to YouTube or social media with regards to Christian apologetics or anything like that?
Not really, just, my name is a very unique name, Negetee. I'm always open for dialogue or discussions and things of that nature. Um, I'm not like the some of the other brethren that's like really into apologetics and things of that nature. But like I said, I'm a really friendly person. If you want to talk, you just hit me up on the messenger, and that's the best way to get in contact with me. And if you don't mind, Pianki, I'll just tell people where they can find my Prophecy Watch page. It's actually on Facebook. You can look up my name, and you should be able to find Prophecy Watch. Like, I put really really interesting topics up that you may not find amongst other people. As far as like the Christian brethren, I get into some really heavy discussions like the New World Order, UFOs, things of that nature. So, if anybody want to link up with me, I can point them to that page if, they just want a good read. And that's pretty much it. That's the best way to contact me is on Facebook. Just look my name up. Negetee is how you can find me. I'm the only one that I know of in the world with that name.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. And you said that's Prophecy Watch?
Yeah, Prophecy Watch. I'll post that in the group chat if if you want to link it to for other people to want to read.
Throw that to me in my inbox, and I'm gonna put it in the description of this video.
Okay, roger that.
So yeah, everybody go check that out. Check out our brother, as he said, very friendly brother, very down to earth, very open to having discussions in a respectful manner. As I always say, we can disagree without being disrespectfully disagreeable. So as you see, the brother came on, talked about his life, talked about his faith, and talked about, his research, where his research has led him with regards to Kemet, the Exodus, etc. And the next time he come on, he'll be presenting that information to you. So be looking out for that. Any more comments, brother, before we close this thing out for good?
I did have a question for you in regards to Kemet.
Go for it.
Do you see any connection between Kemet and the biblical Ham?
Oh man. So I'm gonna be honest with you, bro. I'm gonna be honest with you. For me, the Hamitic story is, and this is no disrespect, to me, it's a fictional story. I do know that Ham, etymology wise or etymology wise, Ham and Kim are definitely connected. But I don't chalk that up to a real figure. I chalk that up to the etymology of those two words. I think that it's a good story to attempt to explain, our people and our lineage, so to speak. But I don't put any real stock into it in terms of real history. I don't believe that is actually a historical character. And again, that's not any disrespect to your belief or the biblical narrative per se. I just don't look at it as a historical story. I look at it as a mythological story. With respect to it.
Okay. Just one last thing. And so I just wanted to share this with you because now I remember when I was in Iraq, and I was dealing with prisoners of war, POWs,
Okay.
and we would capture a lot of people, a lot of men from Egypt.
Okay.
One of the things that kept standing out to me was how they identified themselves. And anytime like we would capture one or we'd be in processing them, be asking them, okay, so where are you from? They would not use the term Egypt. They would use the term Misr. And it was only until somebody brought it to my attention, because I was working another area of the camp, and we were sitting down talking, and one of the soldiers was like, "Man, I cannot figure this out. Like they every time, like they playing games with us, man. Like why they keep saying this place Misr. I don't know what no Misr is." And it hit me. I said, "Bruh, those are Egyptians. They calling Egypt Misr." Now, recall I just asked you about Kemet.
Right.
And Kemet from my understanding, is in relationship to Ham. And Ham had a son named Mizraim.
Mm-hmm.
The name Mizraim is shortened, and this is probably one of the oldest names besides Kemet that's used for Egypt, and that's Misr.
Yeah, I'm walking with you.
So I just wanted to throw that out there, because like I tell my bros, I'm like, look, I believe these people were real, and I understand how a lot of places, a lot of land masses are sometimes named after the people who finds these places, or who established these places. So I just wanted to throw that out there at you, and I'm pretty sure besides the whole Exodus discussion, I would love to get into the beginnings of Egypt, or Kemet, as well. And you had brought up something called the dynamic race theory?
Dynastic race theory, absolutely.
Okay.
I got some. I got a presentation. When I finish, when I actually upload it, I'll drop it in the group and let you check it out. It's because so the dynastic race theory in a nutshell, if because I'm sure you know about it, but for those who don't, the dynastic race theory is a theory that it was basically a racist theory that there was no way indigenous Africans in the area of Kemet could have formed the civilization that we know Kemet became, or Egypt. And so the theory is that people from Mesopotamia came over to Lower Kemet because on the map, or Upper Kemet on the map, Africans view the map, ancient Africans view the map differently than we do. Where we would have considered northern Africa was actually southern Africa to them, and vice versa. So these people from Mesopotamia in Sumer, in that area, came over to Upper Egypt and moved upwards to Lower Egypt and conquered that land and those people that had been ruled in these sort of city states where they had individual chieftains. And one of those individuals was Norman, the first dynastic Insut, or pharaoh of Kemet, or of Egypt. And so that's the hypothesis. And the reason for that hypothesis, because there's a lot of common architecture, burial practices, and artwork that pre-dynastic Kemet has with Mesopotamia. So here, the reason for that, and it's an explanation for it, is because there was a lot of trade between these two areas and a lot of interaction between these two cultures. And you could easily hypothesize that there was intermarriage, and other things, it's undeniable that there was a shared architectural design, weapons, training, trading, and all of this is actually in this presentation that I'll be bringing out either between today and Monday. But
Okay. Yeah.
evidence of a lot of trade. But again, this is pre-dynastic Kemet. So the reason.
Hello. Hello.
Why,
Your phone went
can
out,
you hear
bro.
me? Look like the screen froze for a minute.
I can hear you now.
Okay, cool. The reason I summarily dismiss this notion is because we have evidence that dates further back of the same iconography, the same what is going on? Sorry about that. For some reason, my connection became unstable. But we have the same iconography, the same weaponry, etc., found in Nubia at the same time. And so, we have that iconography in tombs, on pyramids. We have it in graves. We have it on mace heads, etc. And so, my assertion is Norma and company came from Nubia, that Norma was a Nubian. Hence why the trade that was happening and the influence that seemed to have been coming from Mesopotamia slowly, or rather quickly actually, it was slowly starting to die out with King Scorpion. And once Norma came in and conquered both Upper and Lower Kemet, that influence disappears completely. And more Nubian aspects of spirituality, culture, etc., come into effect in Kemet. And so that's why I disagree with the dynastic race theory. And I put forth the notion that Norma was indeed Nubian and thus African. But I do acknowledge that there was interaction and influence from Mesopotamia prior to the dynastic period. So, and like I say, it's sourced and all of that. So you'll be able to check out my presentation, and if you have any counters to it, you're welcome to come on and discuss those as well. So.
Yeah, that'd be very interesting because like it was one thing that just stuck out to me where you was talking about weaponry, and I'm very familiar with the dynastic race theory. I just don't hold to the racial disparity as as Petrie did. I honestly believe that the indigenous population was indeed African, but I think it wasn't. It was more of a marriage between the two, Mesopotamia and the indigenous Africans, that created the dynastic period. But when you brought up, and I'm gonna just leave it at this with this one, weaponry, right? So there's a weapon. It was called the mace head, pretty much.
Yeah.
Some point in time, the original mace head was a disc-shaped mace head, but over a period of time, for some reason, that disc-shaped mace head transformed into a pear-shaped mace head. And from what I've read, the pear-shaped mace head is specifically from Mesopotamia, because we see some of these iconographies with some of the earliest kings on their stone tablets and palettes that have the pear maced head. But when you do your presentation, if I have time, I'll definitely jump on and we can dialogue back and forth about about the things you going to present.
Absolutely. So yeah, that's peace, and yeah, we'll definitely get into that, because I think I think your position is interesting as compared to Petrie and more, because there is a resurgence in the dynastic race hypothesis that I'll touch on. Just putting it out there that there are some scientists who are, going back towards that sort of thinking. So the fact that that's not where you leaning is, I find that refreshing. So yeah, we'll definitely get into it and discuss it. Even if we wait till you come back on, or if you just want to jump on when I get ready to do mine, we'll definitely dialogue about it. But with that, like I said, y'all go check my brother out. Say the name of that prophecy page one more time for me, bro.
Oh, just simply Prophecy Watch. Look for it under my name, Negetee, Negetee.
Yeah,
A lot of E's.
my brother on there. Prophecy Watch, Negetee on Facebook. Check him out, and he'll be back on Paradigm Shift TV 314. Again, speaking his speech, talking about his research on early Kemet, the Exodus, etc. Definitely was an honor and a pleasure to have our brother on, and just look forward to him coming on and giving his breakdowns in the future. So that's been this edition of Paradigm Shift TV. It's your brother Pianki Patama Tulu Nefer Amun Ra, and that's peace.